Welcome back to the Young Adults for Christ podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today it's me, Sebastian, in the studio. It's
Brett France.
And then we have the amazing privilege of having Zenzo on the podcast too. Thank you for joining us, Zenzo.
I don't know why I said my surname. I feel like we have to hear Zenzo.
Did you say Brett France?
I said Brett France.
Okay, Zenzo Nkosi. That's not even my full name. My full name is Zenzo Nkosi, but everyone just calls me Zenzo. So
Zenzo Nkosi.
Yeah, Zenzo Nkosi.
Nice.
It means good deeds.
Nice name,
Good deeds.
Yeah, so
Good name, bro.
And
haven't-
he's got king in there too, you know.
somewhere
He
in
wants to-
Nkosi.
He just wants to be a king the whole time, you know.
Oh God, but I'm far from that. So
Yo, I was like, that's intense.
Dodgy.
A
Maybe
bit
that's
dodgy,
what we
yeah.
were talking about on the podcast. Does Zenzo think he's got...
do I think God, that would be an episode to watch.
I actually did a baby dedication for an Nkosi family, and they actually were talking about how the heritage in their surname does come from like kingship.
Yeah.
Is it the same with you?
It depends. Like I'm Swati, so it's like I've got a certain like tribe, so it's Dlamini Nkosi, which is like I think Swati royalty, but I'm not like the son of a prince or anything. But I mean, yeah, I feel like my name puts a lot of pressure on me because like Zenzo Nkle is like good deeds, and then it's like God or Chief King, so it's like parents were expecting a bit with the good deeds part. So, but yeah, no, I like the name though. It's a unique name, I think.
It's beautiful.
Appreciate that.
I love the meaning behind names, man. It's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah.
Well, I think that's almost why we're having you on the podcast. Number one, because you're like, guys, please can I come on?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Seb was like, we need someone with
We need
wisdom and who's gonna edify us. I was like,
listen to
I guess I can come on.
You sound like that speech I read of James
No, I'm
on
joking.
the weekend before she came through.
Now, to be fair, I did ask. Like, I was like, yo, let me get on the podcast. I like what you guys are doing. So,
That's
I'm happy
cool.
to be here.
Well, I mean, that's exactly, you
Yeah.
know, you asked, but also at the same time, for your namesake, you do a lot of good deeds in our church, but you don't work here.
Yeah.
So I think it works out really well that's what we get to talk about.
Awesome.
Just your life. So thanks for coming, man.
Nah, thanks for having me. Honored to be the first guest. I didn't even know I was going to be like a guest. So, I feel like I'm making history being the first guest.
Making history.
Yeah, so on that, him being the first person on a couch session, I think I'm going to just explain what a couch session is. So basically what a couch session is going to be in the future, we've got some cool friends around. Well, sometimes we have friends. Brett and I actually only have each other. But yeah, we have some cool friends around, and we just thought it would be cool to bring some normal people onto the podcast
Are we
with
not
us.
normal?
No.
I mean,
Not
it's
really.
debatable. Just bring some normal people in normal secular jobs onto the podcast with us to just speak about like being Christians and living out the faith in the real world and what it looks like, how it's different to being in ministry.
Yeah.
And so that's what couch sessions will be. It's just, I think, a more relatable session where there's someone that's out there doing things for Jesus, following the Great Command.
Great Commission.
Great Commission that came out really badly. Yeah.
Well then, I guess Zenzo, maybe you can tell us then, in a succinct version,
Yeah.
how did you come to faith? You tell us about your conversion story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy story, I think, just because, like, I know when I speak to most people about their testimonies, they can explain, like, oh, I was born in the church, or I grew up in the church, it wasn't really for me when I was older, something along those lines. But for me, like, it was the complete opposite. Like, I'd never been to church. I didn't grow up in a Christian family. In fact, I grew up in, like, the exact opposite, like, occultic, Luciferianism, New Ageism. So that's what I was born into. And I know, like, a lot of the time I tell people that it's, like, you know, a bit of a setback, because even when I was in it, like, I didn't know, like, I'm a Luciferian New Age. It's just what I'd been brought up, you know, doing. So my life was basically surrounded around this idea that I could become, like, my own God and higher my own vibrations, and through positive affirmations, you know, I could be everything that I wanted to be. And the reason why I always say Luciferian New Ageism is because I believe, like, that's like the sin of Satan, you know. It's like he wanted to be God. It's that pride. It's that very same thing that the New Age tells you, that you can become your own God, you know, by hiring your own vibrations. Actually, just remembering what Justin said on Sunday, it's like the sin of man, like that idea of having this knowledge of God. So I always say, like, Luciferian New Ageism, because it is really satanic to try and become your own God through what's seemingly like light and positivity. So yeah, since I was born up until I think when I turned 16 was probably the first time I heard the gospel. But throughout all those years, I was living in this system of like New Ageism and this idea that as long as I think positively, I do good deeds, then I can expect the world and more to come to me. So I felt like from a young age, like a burden of having to be a good person. I mentioned also earlier, like my name meaning good deeds. So I almost felt like this prophetic calling, not in like a godly sense, but in a sense that if I just stick to this task of being a good person, doing the right things, at manifesting positivity, then like I should be all good to go. But I often experienced the exact opposite of the very same things that I was like manifesting or trying to attract into my life. And so I became very confused at around the age of I think 13 it was. It was also around the time where I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I had a really bad case of it because it put me in hospital and I almost ended up losing my life at this time. And so I was really confused because I'd been taught by like my dad at the time who had brought me up into the system, my parents, that just as long as I follow this formula, like I could expect the world and more. But I was experiencing the exact opposite. And so I became quite dissatisfied, quite depressed as well. And it was the first time where I was battling with like depression, anxiety, and like suicide ideation. And so it was at that time where I just felt like so disillusioned, but I thought this was the way, the key to unlock everything, to happiness, to, all my desires, which looking back on were obviously like sinful desires. They were personal desires. They were like to be the best footballer in the world or to, have all these worldly things. But I was finding myself in like the exact opposite place. So yeah, I was at a really dark spot. And I remember in 2016, 17, in my grade 10 year, I moved to the Cape for boarding school in the Cape. And I feel like that was good for me because I was separated from like a household where I just knew rituals, routine, like, wake up, you say, not even a prayer, like your mantras, you do like your manifestations, like you light incenses. So going away to quite a secluded area of the country, Stellenbosch, like Franschhoek area, I felt like for the first time, I had like independence of thought. And it was there where I started like questioning, like, this actually doesn't really seem to make sense, like manifestation. And if anything, it's just caused me more harm than any good. And so there was a time where I was literally I felt like my wit's end and my depression was at its peak. And I actually was really contemplating suicide. And I was in a horrible position, like a horrible point in life. And I remember the day, like succinctly, all my other roommates were asleep and I was just on the side of my bed. And I really feel like that day I was being called by God's Spirit because I just said a prayer like, God of the universe, like not even the God that I'd created, this idea of God that I had in my head. I just said, God of the universe, if you exist, please reveal yourself to me. And it wasn't even like I was looking for God. It was literally just like a last hope kind of thing. Like, well, I've tried everything but that. I might as well try this. And I remember the very next day, I went to school. I wasn't thinking much of the prayer because it was more just for my relief than it actually was to get like an answer. Then I came back from school and I only used to check my phone after like 4-ish. So when I checked my phone, I saw a couple of messages on the group chat. And my dad had sent some message on the group and he had sent an image. So I was waiting for it to load. And as I was waiting for it to load, I was just like, packing my stuff away. And then when I opened the photo, it was like, I can't remember the image 100%, but it was like, we are all sinners, like Jesus is king, repent and trust in him. And I almost like threw my phone across the room because I was like, in the new age, the one thing, like the golden rule is never like affirm the negative. You never say you're a sinner. There's no such thing as sin. There's no such thing as evil. You're a godly being. You're your own God. There's no such thing as evil. So for my dad to do that, he was breaking like the golden rule. And obviously I wasn't at home. So I was here at boarding and I was like, what's going on with my dad? Like, and why is everyone in the group saying amen? Like, we're not Christians. Like, this is not us. So I was like, I remember being like angry at him because I remember I used to get in trouble if I would be like, if I would say even something like, this headache's killing me because like in the new age, like you're attracting that stuff to you. And I'd get in trouble, like serious trouble. No, you don't say that. So for him to just be like blatantly break the rule, I was like, how could you say we're sinners? Like for me, that was just crazy. So I remember calling him and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? I was just so confused. And he was just like, for the first time, and my dad and I, we get along, but like there are times where we've clashed and disagreed on things. And both of us are stubborn, so it's not like we're easy to admit like, okay, you know what, I was wrong. But it was like the first time generally I'd heard my dad not even want to argue, just be like, look, I'm sorry for the past 17 years of your life, what I've taught you, what I've brought you up, especially for me, because I'm his oldest child, I'm his son, so he really pumped me with like the new age stuff. But he was like, I'm sorry, like I got it completely wrong. Like I found the God of the Bible. I've been 100, and in that moment, like I didn't even like hear the rest of the things he was saying. I was just kind of thinking like, I feel like there was like these shackles like broken off my feet. Like I don't have to live under the system. Like I didn't know about the cross. I didn't know about Jesus. I just knew like I wasn't bound by that new age system anymore. So anyway, he said like, I'll send you a Bible in the next coming days. So he sent me a Bible from Joburg to Cape Town. I remember it was a black NIV Bible. And for the first 4 days, like I just stared at it because I was too scared to read it. Because I knew like I claimed to be the good new age boy, but like if people really knew me, they'd know I really battled with lust, envy, hatred. I used to lie like a lot. And so I thought like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to open the book. It's going to say, you know, to hell with you, and that's done. That's at least what I thought. And so it took me 4 days, I remember, to actually open it until there was a moment where no one else was in the room and it was just me. And I almost felt like the Bible was like screaming at me. And so just like, and out of desperation, I thought maybe there is like a cure to this problem that I have. Because I know I'm guilty before God, but I don't want to address him. So I remember I just started at the book of Matthew, and I just remember reading through like all the Gospels in like one sitting and just like eating it up. And for the first time, I understood what it meant for, you know, by Jesus died for you. Like for me, like I had Christian family members that would just be like, Jesus died for you, Jesus loved you. I was like, oh, I'm glad he did that for me. But like, I guess if I die, then I'll just hop onto the fact that Jesus died for me, just in case. But it was just like, if Jesus died for me, I can continue sinning. Like, you know, I didn't understand the significance of his death. But when I read the Gospels, like I remember just almost in tears, breaking down in tears in the room by myself and just thinking like, wow, like God is willing to forgive me even though I've done all these things like witchcraft, you know, divination, you know, these new age practices. And I can't say that there was a moment where I was like, I accept this, but it was just like gradually. I remember at school, like people were like, within a day, like I changed. And the next day I was taking a Bible to breakfast. And all my classmates, even the teachers, were like, something's going on with Zenzo. I don't know. Is he on medication? Like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's changed completely. And I feel like literally just from then, it's, I guess the rest is history. But it's been quite the ride.
Bro, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
That moment that you prayed a prayer to like the God of the universe, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
And the way he responds is that perfect timing, because your dad had obviously been on a journey to arrive at that point.
Yeah.
But in God's perfect timing, the next day, he reaches out to you through your father, who you trust implicitly, and there's a beautiful family moment here.
Yeah.
Bro, that is phenomenal.
It's crazy.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is like, it's not like we all just said, okay, we're all going to become Christians today. Like, when my dad was having that experience of his, like his born again experience, my mom was still in the new age. So she's like, what's going on? Like, she was even in tears. I was actually talking to her about it the other day. Like, she was crying because she was like, is my husband going crazy? Like, what's going on? And then she was watching TV, and a Bible verse came on the screen on one of the face channels that she was just like scrolling through. I think it was like Psalm 91, which today is like her favorite psalm. And basically that got her into the word, and then she got saved. So it wasn't like we all just came to like a corporate decision, like, oh, we all becoming Christian. It was like everyone had their own personal experiences like in the space of a month. So, and praise God for that, because I can just imagine like if I was a Christian and there was still new age, like just the tension that would be in the house would be like unbearable. It would be impossible, because like we so strongly believed in it. But now to see like at least we have that, you know, that basis of faith, that common faith, is like, wow, praise God.
That's so good. When
Yeah.
God comes for you, he comes for you hard.
He sent armies, eh?
Literally.
Sure.
That's so good, man.
Yeah. And I think knowing that part of your story, and also a bit more of like, or can you tell us a bit more of like your journey within church?
Yeah.
Like, because you've said you were in boarding school, how did you come to like church? Because I think coming to know Jesus is a step, and then stepping into Christian community is the next step.
100%.
How did you come into that space of Christian community?
Yeah, so I think like before joining a church, before joining Rosebank and specifically, I never thought like church was important. You know, I'd bought into this idea that the church is not a building. I don't need to go and see other people. Like, I can do this walk by myself. And that was when I was fresh out of the new age, because I thought like my experiences with church had been like traumatizing as a kid. Like what I remember from church is like going to your aunt's house, not wanting to go to church, you know, suiting up in some uncomfortable clothing, you know, and the churches that I went to were very like traditional, legalistic, also very traumatizing and stuff, like people rolling on the floor, like type of stuff. So for me, church was never like a positive thing. It was never like, oh, I can't wait to go to church. So now when I was faced with the idea of going to church, I tried my best to kind of find like passages that say, oh no, you don't have to. And up until really like last year, because I mean it's been like since 2018 I've been saved, so it's not been the longest time. But last year during the lockdown especially, I just realized how difficult it was to be a Christian outside of community. And I think I remember reading one of the verses in Matthew, and Jesus talking about like wolves in sheep's clothing, and basically like the idea of sheep. I started to think about like sheep wander all the time, you know, like sheep wander all the time, and the most like appealing thing for a wolf is a sheep that's stranded. And I found like that was my experience. I felt like temptation was unbearable. I had no one. I was keeping myself accountable, which is the worst possible thing you could ever do. I was falling into sin. I was really questioning, like, am I even a Christian, you know? And I felt at the time like I was the only Christian in the world. Like I really felt like I was the only believer in the world. And funny enough, I have some friends overseas who have like not a podcast, but they were doing like live Instagrams, and they're from the UK, a church in the UK, and they were like, could you give a talk on the importance of going to church? And I was like, oh, well, this is awkward, because like I didn't really see at that time the importance of going to church. And so I thought like, yeah, I'll do that. So I just studied on the topic as much as possible, looked through the different scriptures. And what happened is God showed me actually that I think the verse came up when you were giving one of your talks at the young adults meetings. It's like Hebrews 10:24-25. Like, do not neglect, you know, the fellowship of the saints, as is the habit of some. And I was like, yo, I've seen this verse so many times, but that it actually meant something to me. I felt convicted. And so I remember towards this time, actually last year, I was like, I need to get plugged into a church. And not just plugged in, like I need to become a member. I need to like actually make a commitment to going to a church and being held accountable, because I just felt so convicted that, wow, I have been a Christian all this time and I haven't been gathering with God's people. Like, we're a church, we're a body, you know, we make up one building. It's not like this isn't, obviously it's individual experience, but like we're saved into community. And so, yeah, literally it's been like a year and like 2 months maybe since I joined. And I'm a member, so I'm no longer dating the church, as Pastor would say. So yeah, I guess that's my journey to coming to church and actually being like a member of a church.
You serve on Friday nights at the youth ministry.
Yeah, I serve at X Squared.
X Squared,
I even
love the shirt.
had to plug them.
Was he plugging the X Squared?
Gotta plug it.
I had to. This is why I wore this. No.
Youth ministry is awesome.
Yeah, so serving as a leader at the youth ministry, which has been a blessing, like being able to disciple the kids, but also I just feel like so plugged in, like especially now Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. Obviously towards the end of the year, like things are slowing down, but I feel carried by like the prayers of my brothers and sisters. I feel like excited to go and gather and fellowship. Like those are the highlights of my week. Like when Wednesday comes, like, oh, I can't wait till Friday. When Friday comes, I can't wait till Sunday. So yeah, I felt like, yo, I was missing out on this for so long, like, you know. But yeah, serving at the youth is awesome, and even just doing like the check-ins on Sundays is really nice, because I get to see like different faces that I wouldn't usually see, or people I wouldn't necessarily speak to after the service.
It's because he comes on time when he's like that.
Yeah.
Well, if he's not serving, does he come late?
Always.
Me?
Are you
That's not
exposing
true.
the man
That's
on a
not true.
podcast?
That's
I'm
not
exposing
true.
him on
You're
the
bearing
board.
false witness. How
Are
could
you
you?
sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, no, but to be honest, like my last maybe 2-3 weeks, I haven't been the best, and I live like 1.5 kilometers away, which is the worst part.
Well, it's people who live the closest who are always the
But
latest.
can I
How it
tell you
works.
why? Because it's like you think like I'm so close, like it's gonna take me 2 minutes, and then you just leave it to like the very last minute. But I do pride myself on being on time most of the time. But yeah, I haven't been that great recently. So.
Yeah. So now we've spoken about church. We've spoken about Jesus coming into your life. what do you do outside of church and
Yeah.
not outside of Jesus, but outside of church?
Yeah. So I'm currently studying first year law. So coming towards the end of my first year of law. Also like really passionate in football. Last year.
Also really good at football. I remember you
Yeah.
running circles around me
Yes.
at youth camp.
Yes.
Yeah, but she did make that one good save. That
I saved
good
one
save.
of your goals. You scored about 7 goals against me, but I saved one of
but
them.
that was a good save. It made up for all of them. It raised
thank
all
you,
7.
Zenzo.
But yeah, so really passionate about that. I had an opportunity last year to go to Spain on trial, but unfortunately, like a little virus came about and
Just a
kind
little
of, yeah,
vibe.
just a little one. And
Hectic, I didn't know that.
yeah, so I had a trial there. I still have my visa. I just never used it. It's crazy.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a door I think God shut, but then I came to terms with it. Still just working hard because, I mean, it is my passion. It's what I'm passionate about. And so, I mean, I continue training and I just trust if it's God's will that maybe one day something will come about. And then I work on weekends as well, just, like save up a bit of money.
Where do you...
At a restaurant in Bryanston. I won't say the name because then everyone's going to come.
No, we need to know now.
And no, I'll tell you.
Come on, we're gonna come give you tips, bruh.
Nah, don't.
Tiger's Milk.
Yo, that was actually a good guess. It's literally
Next to it.
literally right next to
Jackson's.
it. Yeah,
Jackson's.
Oh,
Jackson's.
no one's
Yeah.
coming to Jackson's, bruh. They don't
Yeah.
even sell Coca-Cola.
Hey, that's rude, bro. Now we're gonna go see our mate.
I'm not saying anything because I work there and I'm not gonna slander.
Yeah, no, we're gonna slander. You exposing this only
Look at this
slandering
guy.
at restaurants,
Look at
Jackson's.
this guy. No, Jackson, I don't affiliate.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
But yeah, so quite busy. It is quite busy, but I think like one thing for me is I always try my best to be an ambassador outside of just the church, because I think it was actually one of the young adults we were talking about like being ambassadors and how we come to church, but it's not just for us. We're supposed to be fed and then go out and then feed into other people's lives outside the church. I think for me the most difficult place I've found to be a Christian is definitely in my football, because anyone who knows me, like I'm a really passionate guy, like very on the pitch, like want to win, like very competitive, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Like I don't think God is against passion per se, but then it's also about like controlling that and also just trying my best to play for His glory and not just to win or just to be the best on the pitch or just for those things. But for the most part, I feel like even in my university, outside, I mean, all my secular friends know I'm a Christian. They know that's who Zenzo is. It hasn't always been easy though, because I have, especially before I was in church, felt like the only Christian in the world. Or when I am in those secular spaces, like I used to get, for example, at my old school, my high school, like persecution was quite serious there. I remember one time in the boarding house, I ended up preaching the gospel. It just came out. Like it wasn't even something planned, the gospel conversation just came about, and I was talking to someone. It was the most hostile experience I've had to date. Yeah. But I feel like it's taken away like the fear of evangelizing, because I was like, surely nothing can be worse than that experience.
Sure.
So the guy was just like going off saying like, I hate you because you're a Christian, and I was like, and in seconds, like the whole boarding house was in this one room.
Yeah.
So it was a real blessing, because like to this day I get messages from people like, hey Zenzo, I don't know if you remember me, but we were at school together, and I was in grade whatever. The one time I heard you speaking about Jesus in the room at boarding, and I've been going to church recently. Would you give me some scriptures? Like, so stuff like that does happen. So I've really seen like fruit in those places where I just felt like so persecuted, so like the outcast, like the guy who just sits away from everyone because he's like the Christian, he's a bigot, he's like all these things. But I have seen like real fruit come out of that, so it's made it all worth it. So I'd say like I try and be as Christian in church as I would out there, because I want to be that light. But I would be lying if I said like, oh, I'm the best ambassador for Christ. Like I always tell people like, look to Jesus if you want to know about Jesus. Don't look to His disciples, because if you think that's where you'll find who Jesus is, you'll be disappointed a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But we still have that responsibility, I guess, to represent Him well. So yeah.
So tell me then, like in say your soccer team.
Yeah.
What's it like being, say, one of the only Christians, or maybe the only Christian in that space? You're all playing to win. you'll do anything for the win. Then there's the drinks afterwards.
Yeah,
there's the
yeah,
fines evenings. Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Maybe like my sporting career was nowhere near a career. It was just a stupid child at varsity in school. But I even remember the boys' club.
Yeah,
we would
yeah,
speak
yeah.
about women.
100%.
I look back at that stuff. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I used to say and think those things.
Yeah.
Obviously, Christ has changed my heart since then. But
That's
for
good.
you being in that space still today as a young man, what's it like?
Yeah, it is tough because I feel like and I always say Lungi and I have this conversation often because we both play football, and I always say to him, like, one thing I've realized is the verse that's really come true in my life in this regard is like that bad company corrupts good morals, you know, and that you would never when you're in a group of people, although we're meant to be lights, like the group is never going to become more Christian for you. You know, inevitably you're going to end up being more secular for them.
Wow.
So for me, it was like, these are my teammates, like, you know, we work hard on the pitch, but it's not like they're plugged into my life. Like, I have people plugged into my life, and that's the church, you know. I'm after the games, like, the drinks out, like, that's just not my thing, that's not me. So people do find me a bit of like a recluse, like, why does this guy always, like, you know, exclude himself from those things? But I just know it's because, like, I like social environments for the most part. I mean, sometimes my battery's rained out completely, but like, I know there's a temptation to be in those groups, and there have been times where I've been with people and I've been like, you know, there's their joke that they're cracking. It might not even be the most sinful thing, but it's just like, I make a comment, I'm like, oh, actually, I would never say that, like, around my Christian friends, or that would never come out of my mouth generally. So it's just about being I guess intentional about how much time I'm actually spending with these guys. And also, if something is just so against what I believe and so like antithetical to my belief in Christ, like, can I really just sit and not say anything? So it is a bit uncomfortable sometimes having to be like, I disagree, bro. Like, no, I don't see women like that. Or actually, no, I'm proud not to be sleeping around, even though it's like, oh, look at this guy. He can't get a girl or whatever. So it is difficult because obviously nobody wants to feel like the loser or like the outcast. But I've just found like the fear of man, like it says in Proverbs, is a snare. It's literally like it's a weight on your shoulder, like always trying to say the right thing, always trying to, like, that's sinful because we should only fear God like that, you know. So for me it was like, if I can put that same fear of man towards God, like, how much more would I be passionate to stand up for what God's passionate about, to do his will. But I would, like I said, I can't say that it's the easiest thing. Like, I'm just there, I'm like super saint. When the guys are cracking the jokes, I'm just like, no, I'm holy, I don't do that. It isn't easy, but I mean, like, I've had to be intentional about that. And unfortunately, I have lost like many friends I've had for like decades. Like decades, I say decades. I'm only 2 decades. Like a decade. Sorry, I felt like an old man in this chair. No, but yeah, so friends I've had like for my whole life, and they just heard that I was a Christian, and that was enough for them to be like, that's it. So it has been difficult in that sense, but even Jesus says, like, people who've lost like brothers, sisters, mothers, and friends in this world will be paid in this life and the life to come. And I've, just in this church alone, those people have been replaced. Like, I've been filled by others who actually feed into my life more than people I've known for 10 plus years have. So yeah,
That's incredible.
So encouraging. Thanks, bro.
Oh.
of course, man.
I think leading off that, you were speaking into the world, and I think, do you think that, like, living in today's society, in the views that the world has today, do you think it's harder to come into a life with Christ? I think that being a Christian out there in the world is harder today than it ever has been.
I think yes and no. The reason I say I'll start with the no first is because obviously, like, apostles were being stoned for preaching the gospel. You know, we've got so many martyrs that died, were burnt at the stake for the faith, and just the dangers, even in other countries, I think, of people not even being allowed to name the name of Christ because they fear death. Like, I mean, we're here speaking freely about him, and that's really just because of God's grace. But I do think, in the sense that life was so much more like simple back then. You know, now I know for me, social media, like, temptation is like multiply by like 1,000. I was speaking to, was it my dad? No, I don't think it was my dad. Somebody older. I think it was an older Christian man. I can't remember when. It was a conversation I had a couple of years ago, and he was mentioning how back in his day, like lust, for example, like men being exposed to like sexually explicit things, like it would be very hard to come by. You'd have to go digging, like somewhere, like your uncle's, I don't know, garage or whatever, to find something. And even then, it was mild compared to what's being, shown to people as young as 10 on like TikTok and Instagram. So even for me, when I was young, like being exposed to those things at a very young age, like even now, there's certain things I have to do, like certain things I have to implement. Like, okay, after this time, this is off, or there's a block on this, just because not even the like irresistible desire to want to go online, but just the fact that you go on Instagram and the first thing there is like, like explicit images that just pop up. So I feel like in that sense it is difficult because with the digital world, with just what has become normalized, like certain things that are normalized now, like when my dad, for example, as a kid was just like, oh my gosh, if somebody's even seen outside looking like that, it's just like, what are you doing? That, and everyone just agreed, like, but I feel like we've progressed into the point where like certain sins are just so acceptable that it's now like, I wonder, like, how would it be, like, one day, if God willing, I ever have children? Like, how would I ever, manage to guard their eyes if the society really, like, this is so difficult? So I do think, like, in different ways, it is more difficult, especially because now, it's like there's a cancel culture. So you say people are too scared to speak up because they fear, like, losing their job or being ostracized. And, I mean, I feel like sometimes, even in a sense, that's worse than just knowing, like, I'll just die on the spot if I speak about this. Because with, like, being ostracized, being, like, excluded from community, it's like you're constantly living with this idea that you're not one of us. You don't belong. You're not human. You're not loved. Whereas if you die on the spot, it's like a moment like that and you're gone, And most Christians or, like, or believers would be like, if I die for the Lord, like, I'm honoring him. Obviously, we don't want to, but, I mean, it's like... So I feel like it is difficult because... even with Christians, I feel like even sometimes maybe as a community of Christians or the church, we're scared to talk about things because we might disagree on different issues and not want to like cause a rift. So there's a bit of like, I want to say something, but I don't want to make this person uncomfortable. Or if I do, is it just like if I disagree with what's being taught here, do I just leave the church immediately? Like there's, what I mean? There's a lot of like, there's a more confusion and I feel like nuances that are here today that weren't there like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. I feel like we've lost the ability to disagree and still be friends.
100%.
Or disagree and respect one another's opinion. So you're just like, just stuff you then.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah. I think that's become the problem with community out there.
Even like within our church. Not our church, but within
just the church.
Like, we all believe the same stuff, maybe nuanced differently, and we're scared to like challenge each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. Zenzo, we have been going for, believe it or not, over half an hour.
Yeah.
We are gonna. You know what I'm gonna have to do? We're gonna have to do a part 2.
I think we do.
Because
I'd be down.
This is our first couch session, and just the two of you, me and you talking, Seb. Half an hour. Sometimes we feel we could go to 50 if we want to.
Yeah.
With a third person in here, we could easily do 50. And I feel like your life's so cool, people actually want to hear more about it. So how about this? How about we set up a part 2? And we'll release it in the new year.
Awesome.
Would you be open to that?
Yeah, of course. I'd be honored to come on again.
So I'd love to pick your brain a bit more, hear a little bit of your story. I'd love to like actually go into that moment in the boarding house. When everyone came around you. And
That'd be super cool.
maybe we can open with that story next time.
Of course.
I'd love to hear more about it. And the fact that the God has used that in years to come.
Yeah.
That is your life, isn't
it? Your life is the last 4 or 5 years of your life have just like
they have been quite
crazy, and I think to just dig in deeper would be super cool.
Awesome. I'd be honored to do that.
Black, dude. Well, that's it from us for this episode. What are we on? Episode 6.
This will be episode 7.
Is this episode 7?
Yeah.
And we're going to take a little bit of a break, but new year we'll be replacing with opening with part 2.
Awesome.
Zenzo and Nkosi.
Yeah,
but guys, thank you so much for joining us. Any closing words before we wrap out?
Just thanks once again for having me. I really enjoy I think anytime we get to sit down and just talk about Christ and his church, it's always a good time. And I think every time I want to leave like people with a verse I always leave it with, especially for my unbelieving friends who might be watching, is a verse that Jesus says. I can't remember in which verse of the Gospels of Matthew he says it in, but he says, or the Gospel of Matthew rather, but he says that, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul, and what can a man give in exchange for his soul? So yeah, I'll just leave everyone with that.
So good.
It's incredible. Yeah, and I think I just want to wish everyone listening a very happy festive season. And yeah, I pray that the festive season is good to you guys and that Jesus draws near through this time. Yeah, and have a great time.
Amen.
Yeah.
Be safe. Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Cheers.
guys.